the terrorist face. Let's prove that this terrorism won't work on us. It won't stop our movement. That nothing, actually, short of death, won't stop our movement. It's progress to the point now where the courts are, when they're in a position where they're not pressured into giving us some sort of appeasement, and that of course catches the prison personnel, staff, the pigs here up in Cross. They have no way at all whatsoever now. Here, blue, open there. You know what I'm saying? The comrades, they feel the comrades have lost their reservation, their hold. They still feel that. But they're convinced of it now. And you're not sure why? I'm talking about the whole state. I'm talking about the other state. You've heard about the into strike. To the strike. That's increase wage. What do you call it? The hazard pay. Wait. It catches the prison pigs up in the Cross. They know that the courts are in a move now to appease. They also know that the comrades don't fear the courts any longer. That forces them to revert to terrorism. Not terrorism. Just 2 days ago, they beat one black almost to death in the hospital.
One of the things that people outside of women, you can use your case and other cases to work as an organizing tool, without without bypassing all means, legal means, court means, mass action, and stuff like that. How can we outside? What kind of things can we do to make real changes in that kind of stuff and put checks on them?
Well, it fits right in with the monumental problem, the monumental historical problem, the antithesis of all, sitting at home. Our opinion is that the reason we haven't been able to move forward is because left-wing factions can't unite. They just haven't been able to unite. Very few other things. And we've been hoping that on our substructural level, the substructural level of the prison movement, we could possibly provide an example for the rest of the movement. And because the oppression of the need to unite in our particular substructural level is overt and clear. We're faced with overt, clear, general oppression. And being that our need is great, we figure that we're hoping that we could first do leadership of Vanguard parties. We could first involve the community, show the community that the differences that the National Advertising Council is convinced that our president really are losing. We want to convince them that the community that the differences are losing. Of course, we run into some snags. The snags being, as far as I'm concerned, being part of the prison mentality in general.
All power to the people, Chairman. We're gonna get established. We're gonna get going 5 minutes at 5.
All right. The problems generally center around the fact that people don't quite understand what democratic centralism is. I think now our ideal is to project ourselves into the future, of course, but at the same time we have to realize that we have to understand that we're not quite all capable of all opinions are equal, and we have to have some sort of centralism. Our preference, of course, is democratic centralism. People don't understand that that's a necessity at this stage. That's what we're working towards is the point where all opinions be equal or being equal. But right now, we have to have the guidance and the purposeful leadership of Vanguard Party. Like in this central committee, general staff of the people.
How do you think that kind of Vanguard Party can be developed, or do you think that it has been developed in the Black Panther Party?
I'm Black Panther. Vanguard Party.
Do you think that the party is a Vanguard Party? Just the black community and the white community?
No. I believe pretty soon, all those questions, as far as I'm concerned, will be cleared up. The party, the paper is going to run a series of articles where I discuss nature, fascism, and in particular, towards the end, the form that it took in the United States. In one paragraph or two, you'll find a statement that, well, my principal belief is that the fact that we're the most oppressed class, most oppressed segment of society, the fact that we're at the bottom of the pyramid, we have to take the initiative. Is that background on? We're going to have to take the initiative. I feel that our job is to begin the process. Once the process is begun, once we provide the it's my hope, or our hope, that the intercommunal ideal is spread from our community to yours, the other community. But of course, we know what the term Vanguard means.
Well, there's one in one interview by Wayne Brown in San Francisco paper, The Good Times. She made a statement that they asked her what she thought of weathermen and their actions. She made a statement that she said, I don't know what the weathermen are doing, but I know that they're not the Vanguard Party, because they're not the Black Panther Party, and the Black Panther Party is the Vanguard Party, and thus they're not the Vanguard Party. And a lot of people were wondering about two things: one, her concept of Vanguard Party, and two, the reasons that she didn't know what weathermen was doing, assuming that they are engaging in some sort of revolutionary activity.
Well, I won't try to second guess for Elaine's definition of Vanguard Party, but I just gave you a brief yeah, man. I just gave you a brief summation of why. Why I feel that Black Panther Party and the Black Panther Party are big in the country. And it's of course, really only Black revolution organization. And the reason, like I said, that we have to be Vanguard is that we're faced with
All power to the people, comrades.
the objective necessity.
We're on page 70 and Blood on My Eye. We're going to go ahead and get started with the study.
1 second, I got to pull it up.
All power to the people.
You said 70?
Yeah.
All right, 1 second. All right.
All power to the people. First, before I get started, I want to acknowledge Chairman Fred's birthday the other day, Chairman Fred Hampton Sr., who is one of the principal ideological leaders in the Panther Revolution. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Then you have the very healthy, spontaneous mass looting, perfect disorder at some point in the development of the overall struggle, revolutionary culture, it will have to become totally independent of the old enemy culture, in keeping with Che's theory of molding the new society around the struggle against the old. We will start from the beginning to build our own infrastructure in every possible area: people's stores, hospitals, banks, buses, army. This dual power, this building of political infrastructure and the military is succinctly stated by the Minister of Defense of the Black Panther Party, Huey P. Newton. Quote, "We recognize that in order to bring the people to the level of consciousness where they will seize the time, it would be necessary to serve their interests and survival by developing programs which will help them to meet their daily needs. For a long time, we have had such programs not only for survival, but for organizational purposes. Now, we not only have a breakfast program for school children, we have clothing programs, we have health clinics, which provide free medical and dental services. We have programs for prisoners and their families. And we are opening clothing and shoe factories to provide for more of the needs of the community." So right here, you can see how the Black Panther Party, the original Black Panther Party, sought to address a wide array of the people's needs to the community. And you can just look at what Huey was talking about here and update it. You know, there's still a need for a food program. There's still a need for a health clinic, people's health clinic, people's dental services. There's still a need for clothes, sneakers, boots, or whatever, because we're still being oppressed and exploited and dominated by the same enemy that Huey was talking about almost 50-something years ago. So most recently, we have begun a testing and research program on sickle cell anemia. And we know that 98% of the victims of this disease are Black. To fail to combat this disease is to submit to genocide. To battle it is survival. Catch that, comrades. Catch that. To fail to combat this disease is to submit to genocide. To battle it is survival. All these programs satisfy the deep needs of the community, but they are not solutions to our problems. That is why we call them survival programs, meaning survival pending revolution. We say that the survival program of the Black Panther Party is like the survival kit of a sailor stranded on the raft. It helps him to sustain himself until he can get completely out of that situation. So the survival programs are not answers or solutions, but they will help us to organize the community around a true analysis and understanding of their situation. When consciousness and understanding is raised to a high level, then the community will seize the time and deliver themselves from the boot of their oppressors. I think in these two paragraphs, you can see here the overarching ideological theme of Pantherism. It's basically around serving the community until a time we can seize power. And this is what Huey is talking about. And I would advise comrades to read this if they want to get an idea on what kind of programs they can develop immediately in their community where they live at, not over the social media, although that's important. But the more real organizing is to leave social media and go into our communities right where we live at and build up an organic revolutionary force. In following this strategy, we at once feel a very real vacuum that already exists in the Black colony, brown and poor white too, where the people are not being fed, clothed, provided with adequate medical treatment or transportation facilities. This will create the consciousness that comes from the introduction of people's government. It will help the people to understand the force and energy of revolution. We are organizing them around their needs. We will not distract them with such empty questions as who will be elected from which political party. For us, brothers and sisters, comrades, all political parties, as things stand, will support the enemy power complex. Any individual elected will either be a supporter of the established politics or, quote, an individual. What will help us, in fact, is to allow as many right-wing elements as possible to assume political power. And if you're serious, you would agree with this. Why elect or try to elect people with good morality, good integrity into a house that is poisonous, that is corrupt? There's a saying that any militant elected into the enemy's parliament or senate will end up soothing their militancy, dumbing it down, because that's the kind of effect of going into the enemy system has on your politics. We could be a militant all day outside the enemy structure, but when we get in there, that's when stuff dumbs down and we have to follow the rules. So there's no need for us to just pretend like this system shouldn't be destroyed. We shouldn't even be a part of it. And this is what George is saying right here. He said, what will help us, comrades, in fact, is to allow as many right-wing elements as possible to assume political power. The warnings that our thrust towards self-determination will bring on fascism are irresponsible, or better, unrealistic. The fascists already have power. The point is that some way must be found to expose them, brothers and sisters, and combat them. An electoral choice of 10 different fascists is like choosing which way one wishes to die. The holder of so-called high public office is always merely an extension of the hated ruling corporate class. It is our benefit, it is to our benefit, brothers and sisters, that this person be openly hostile, despotic, unreasoning. And this applies for both parties, Democrats and Republicans. We are not living in a nation where left-wing parties hold 80 out of 200 seats in the congressional body, or even 8 out of 200. This is a huge nation, brothers and sisters, dominated by the most reactionary and violent ruling class in the history of the world, where the majority of the people just simply cannot understand that they are existing on the misery and discomfort of the world. Catch that. Catch that. Why is it, this is the question, why is it that whenever a war takes place and the enemy propaganda convinces the people in this country that that target overseas is similar to Hitler or almost similar to Hitler, the people in this country, this is what George is saying, do not really understand that they are being tricked and deceived into going into accepting the interests of capitalism all over the world. And when those resources come back to this country, they become content. They become bougie. Like the leadership of the unions. We call that the labor aristocracy. These guys get $200,000 a year. $200,000 a year. And where do you think that money come from? The diamond fields of the Congo, the platinum fields of Liberia, the gold of Africa, the bananas of Latin America, the tomatoes of Latin America that McDonald's use on its hamburgers. So you can see what I'm saying. The products are manufactured overseas with the raw material in undeveloped countries and then brought over here, then brought to France, Britain, and the United States. There's no huge manufacturing industry here in this country. Factories been shut down. Everything is built along finance capitalism now. You have some service industries, but for the most part, United States wealth comes from the exploitation and domination of land, resources, and markets overseas. All of it, all of it. There's no such thing as a moral capitalist, as a moral imperialist. So George Jackson is saying, the people, they have been hypnotized into believing that criticism of the expansionist policies of imperialism is really isolationist or injurious to both the USA and the world. You hear what they say, if you criticize the United States when they at war, oh, that's lack of patriotism. You heard what they were saying in the 2000s about the torture chambers in Guantanamo Bay. The rendezvous around the world in that little plane where they would snatch a person off the street, put them in a black hole in Afghanistan, or put them in a black hole in Syria, put them in a black hole in Libya and in Egypt and in Kenya, which was set itself up as a torture chamber back then and still is. So this thing is serious. And George is saying it is not wrong to criticize this government. And don't let no one make you feel guilty and criticizing this illegal, illegitimate government. So brothers and sisters, comrades, we are faced with two choices: to continue as we have done for 40 years, fanning our pamphlets against the hurricane, or starting to build a new revolutionary culture that we would be able to turn on the old culture. Collectively, we have that choice. The Black colony, as it sits out here alone, has no such choice. Catch that. George is making a point here between mother radicals and Black radicals in the Black colony. The two different levels of oppression, how it's viewed. And I want comrades to check this out. I'm gonna read it one more time. It's important. We are faced with two choices: to continue as we have done for 40 years, fanning our pamphlets against the hurricane, or starting to build a new revolutionary culture that we will be able to turn on the old enemy culture. Collectively, we have that choice. Collectively, meaning everybody in the country, we have that choice. But the Black colony, as it sits out here alone, has no such choice. And why is he saying that? Why don't we have a choice? Because we are at the bottom of the economic totem pole. We have been racialized. We have been colonized. We have been enslaved. We have been removed 6,000 miles from Africa, brought to the Caribbeans in the 1500s, and then eventually landed here in 1619 in August. So we have no choice but to fight and resist and to stand up. And that's the nature of the struggle. Not compromise, not who we can elect into the enemy system, but how can we turn this new revolutionary culture that's building across the country as a result of the George Floyd murder, Breonna Taylor murder? How can we turn this new revolutionary culture on the old culture of the gangster hoe mentality, the individualism, the collaboration, the snitchism. How can we turn this new revolutionary culture on that? That's what George Jackson is saying, brothers and sisters and comrades. In a report from Jonathan Jackson in early 1970, he said, "We are not going to wait until the USA attacks the people of the USA or Angola." Let me just explain. He's talking about, at that time, it was called the Union of South Africa. That's what that apartheid state was called prior to Nelson Mandela assuming the role of puppet for the International Monetary Fund in the 90s. South Africa used to be called the Union of South Africa. We are not going to wait until the USA attacks the people of the USA or Angola, Mozambique, or any of the other African nations in 4 minutes. We can't wait. We shouldn't even allow this thing to happen in Indochina. Bank of America, Chase Manhattan, First National City Bank of New York, Urban Trust Company, the Morgan Monopoly, Manufacturers Hanover Trust, Continental National Bank, First National Bank of Chicago, Bankers Trust Company, and a dozen lesser firms all have great financial interests in the Union of South Africa right now. This is what Jonathan Jackson was saying. But remove the Union of South Africa and pick Congo right there. Put the Congo right there. That's all you got to do. Put Liberia right there. Or put El Salvador right there. Put Puerto Rico right there. That's all. In 1966, the United States of America investment in one small African nation was $667 million. It's almost double since then. In 1968, 75% of all goods from the United States entered the Union of South Africa duty-free. Soon we'll be asked to fight the people of the Union of South Africa. He's talking about Nelson Mandela, the ANC, the People's African, the Pan-African Congress that was under Robert Sobukwe. He's talking about Chris Hani, Steve Biko that founded the Black Consciousness Movement. So he's not talking about the whites over in South Africa. So Jonathan Jackson goes on to say, no, I'm not waiting for them to attack another part of Africa or Asia. I'm entering the war right now on the side of the Vietnamese. On the side of the Vietnamese. And that's a very important word right there. On the side of the Vietnamese. Not on the side of the Vietnamese because they were Vietnamese. He entered the war on the side of the revolutionaries, of the socialists, of the oppressed, of the colonizer. That's what he means when he said, I'm entering the war on the side of the Vietnamese. Because there's only two fights in this world. The fight of socialism, which is a world of justice, a world of liberty, a world of harmony, where the means of production, the resources are owned collectively by the people, or on the side of the imperialists, the colonizer, the racist, where the resources of the world is controlled by Warren Buffett, by Bill Gates, by these bums at the top of the economic pyramid system. So what side of the struggle you on? This is what Jonathan is saying when he said, I'm entering the war right now on the side of the Vietnamese. I'm entering the war right now on the side of the revolutionaries in Latin America, on the side of the revolutionaries in the Caribbean, on the side of the revolutionaries in Africa, in Europe. That's the side we have to choose, because those are the oppressed people, the freedom fighters. Rich people don't fight to liberate themselves. They fight to keep themselves in power. It is our job to liberate ourselves and to unseat them by 1,000 cuts if we had to. So the Black colony has little choice. We must enter the war on the side of the majority of the world's people, even if it means fighting the United States majority. We fight to live, and we're learning to fight. It will be a war to the knife if necessary. We can't wait, brothers and sisters, comrades, until the generation that thinks of Blacks as niggas and the rest of the world as gooks, chinks, spics, etc., has been educated away. It may be the reverse that happens. We niggas and gooks may be blown away first. Or if we survive, what will we inherit? A desert? We can't. We can't hold our struggle in abeyance, brothers and sisters. We can't wait on our allies to get their courage up before we take the fight to the enemy. We can't wait on grant money before we take the fight to the enemy. We can't wait on 10 people to sign on before we take the fight to the enemy. The fight has already started. What side are you going to enter on? What side? Fight started a long time ago. Long time ago. 1492, when that bum Columbus was selling up and down Africa, establishing century ports. And they started stealing Africans off the southern coast of Africa, whether that was in Senegal or Ghana. The war started then. We amass what people we can. Perhaps that won't be the whole lower class. We amass ourselves and any ally we may be able to draw from the whole class structure. And we will attempt to wage a war on property and property rights. Essentially, that is the fight. Let me go through this whole thing, because I'm gonna break this down one more time. Let me go through this passage. Catch what George Jackson is saying here, comrades. We amass what people we can. Perhaps that won't be the whole lower class. We amass ourselves and any ally we may be able to draw from the whole class structure. And we attempt to wage a war on property and property rights. Essentially, that is the fight. Not that poor man who lived down the street from you, who may own a bodega. Not the teacher who may be Latino and your neighbor. Not the Arab who may run a store in our community. George is saying property, those who control the means of production, such as the schools, such as the railroads, the banks, the hydroelectric dams, the electricity, the finance capitalists that own Wall Street, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank. Those people control 99% of the world's resources. This is what George is talking about. The 1,670 billionaires that control 99% of the world right now. They own the property. They're responsible for your misery, not this race thing that the oppressor created to divide the people. Oh, you black, I hate you. Oh, you white, I can't trust you. Oh, you Latino. Or you Arab, you may drop a bomb on me. You hear all the stuff that keep us divided? George is saying that's not the fight. The fight is property. Who controls property? The enemy, and the enemy use property to do what? Keep us oppressed and exploited and downtrodden. But if we cannot draw the support that is necessary for such a war, then we see a positive benefit for the majority of the world's people in the reduction of this whole country to a vast wasteland and a graveyard for 200 million of history's most damnable fools. Comrades, brothers and sisters, in the People's War, urban style, each political move towards organizing people around their realistic needs will support a corresponding military move. This unity of politics and war will increase the overall revolutionary consciousness by degrees to a point where mass consciousness can be said to exist. The Black Panther Party is the largest and most powerful political force existing outside of enemy politics. It draws this power from the people. It is the people's natural political vanguard. Now, let us assume the existence of a small, tightly knit, totally committed, and separate military vanguard, such as Jonathan Jackson attempted to build. Jonathan was my brother and closest comrade. I knew him. He was the real super nigga. He worked at it real hard. Jonathan, brothers and sisters, is only 16 at this time, so keep that in mind, perspective. He took complete control of himself. He learned every weapon in the human arsenal, from the flying side thrust foot attack and the quick draw snapshot to the manufacture and use of the mortar. He knew 6,000 ways to kill a man, 30 with the simple stroke of an empty hand or foot. He was 17 years old when he died in the service of the people, on the side of the Black colonies, and with the courage of the whole colonized world. The courage of the whole colonized world, 17 years old, entered the court, told the pig, take our picture. We're not criminals. We're here to free our comrades. And he handed weapons to those cats that were in San Quentin. And they took them. And they made a strike for their freedom. And they died on their feet, not on their knees, groveling at the enemy power structure. They died. These are heroes. Died on their feet, thumping their nose at the oppressor. At any time, anyone can throw a rock at the oppressor. That is a comrade of mine, and it should be of yours as well. Let's assume where Jonathan is concerned that, quote, our battle cry reaches some receptive ear, and another hand reaches down to take up our weapon. We have two perfectly harmonious fits, the left front ram of the Black Panthers' political thrust and the left back ram of the August 7th movement. We talked about the August 7th movement already. Let's further assume that this nation is one huge city that we can call by its rightful updated name, Johannesburg. This clarifies the understanding of urban people's war, the concept of true internationalism, and the connections, interactions, processes, and effects of a people at war under the leadership of a vanguard, which wields a double-edged sword against its isolated enemy element. Catch that, brothers and sisters. Let's further assume that this nation is one huge city that we can rightfully call by its rightful updated name, Johannesburg, or for my purposes, I would love to hear perhaps France or Germany, whatever, because all of them are enemy countries. This clarifies the understanding of urban people's war, the concept of true internationalism, and the connections, interactions, processes, and the effects of a people at war under the leadership of a vanguard, which wields a double-edged sword against an isolated enemy element. All the cities of this country can be treated as one interconnecting entity due to the necessity of exchange and interactions caused by specialization. We can now deal with them as a single entity because of the national character of the Vanguard Party and revolutionary consciousness within the inner Black colony. All Anglo-Western cities are generally the same when they are reduced to the critical features that support them. Catch that. What are the critical features that support Anglo-Western cities? It is the state. This is what George is talking about. The military, the prisons, the armed wing of the state. Will you reduce them, take away all this propaganda about milk of land and honey in the West? Take away all that propaganda and look at the bare skeleton of these Western states. They all have the same features. They have a military, they have prisons, they have courts. That is state power. That's what George is saying. All Anglo-Western cities are generally the same when they are reduced to the critical features that support them. I could be talking about London. What about New York? Perhaps Chicago, Detroit, Los Angeles, San Francisco, maybe Seattle, Paris, Berlin, or Rome instead of Johannesburg. All of it is the same, comrades. They were built on the backs of the transatlantic slave trade. They all the same, all the same. Mao Zedong pictured the United States as the city of the world, surrounded, besieged, and slowly strangled to death by a third force under arms. Using Mao's theoretical springboard, I wish to make further comments on the hypothetical, super technological city-state and its vulnerability. Any honest expert, George Jackson, go on to state, brothers and sisters and comrades, in the overall strategy and logistics of classic Western mechanized warfare, the war of the industrially based established state will admit that the scientific guerrilla force must be outnumbered 10-1 in manpower by the mechanized force if it is to be contained at all. Catch that. Catch that. The guerrilla, this man with a bag of rice and one shotgun. In order for the enemy to take him down, they must pit 10 against him. And George's going to go on and explain why. I could do it, but George is a whole lot intelligent than I am on this issue. So catch what Conrad is saying here. The establishment army, the defenders of property, of the industrial complex, armed with the tools and weapons of heavy industry, must field 10 men for just one guerrilla, one revolutionary. Look how powerful you are. Look how powerful you are, brothers and sisters. They need 10 against you, 10. This point is a strong indication of the relative effectiveness of two fighting styles. Recent reports, March 1971, coming in from Indo-Chinese theater, describe such debacles as 80 USA enemies, 80 USA 40-ton tanks racing in wild retreat from the guerrillas, puppet soldiers and USA mercenaries in their haste to disengage from the people's forces are lashing themselves to the runners of rescue helicopters. You just seen what they did in Afghanistan. George is describing the exact same phenomenon. All those turncoats and sellouts that fell off them planes as they were leaving Afghanistan a few months ago were collaborators. They worked with the occupier, with the colonizer. That's why George said these mercenaries, in their haste to disengage from the people's forces, are lashing themselves to the runners of rescue helicopters. Rescue helicopters. Disaster for the man with the most and best equipment is threatening and imminent. Disaster. Now is the time for us, comrades, to fill the streets with our protests, clog the tunnels and backstairs of covert totalitarian government with every weapon at our disposal. I'm going to read this last paragraph, and then we're going to open it up as we normally do to questions and answers. I'm going to turn it over to Chairman Jake, who will facilitate that. We'll have a 15-minute discussion. And comrades, as we do every week, I advise you to use what's happening in your community, around you, your world perspective, to relate to what Field Marshal Comrade George Jackson is saying. Whatever you're dealing with, or whether you got a food program or you're a teacher struggling in school to get people conscious and aware of what's happening, whatever you are, just try to relate this to what's happening in the world today. The effectiveness of rallies and mass demonstrations has not come to an end. Their purpose has diacritically altered, but the general tactic remains sound. Today, the rally affords us the opportunity to effect intensive organization of the projects and programs that will form the infrastructure of our communes. If the mass rallies close, as they have in the past, with a few speeches and a pamphlet, we can expect no more results than in the past. 2 hours later, the people will be Americans again, instead of people. But going among the people at each gathering with clipboards and pens and painfully ascertaining what each can contribute to clear-cut, carefully defined political projects is the distinction between intensive organization and the sterile, stilted attempts to build new unions, rank and file, etc., or elect a socialist legislator, Bernie Sanders, or for that matter, the Amazon labor union. Now, enough time has gone by, brothers and sisters. I'm not being premature in saying that that Amazon labor union that was established in New York has been effectively co-opted by the Democratic Party, and I have evidence to substantiate that. So George is making a good point here. We look what George is saying. Think about what just happened in New York a few months ago, where they were able to organize. Comrades, can y'all mute your phones, please? All power to the people. Think about what happened a few months ago in New York, where they were able to organize an Amazon labor union. And they did it without the support of the established labor unions like AFL-CIO, like SIETA and all these other groups, Luna, whatever you want to call them. But since that time, the leader or the co-leaders have sat down with President Biden, has sat down with the DNC, the Democratic Leadership Council, in order to forge a path forward for labor. So they have been totally co-opted. Don't tell me about let's start a union. Talk to me about let's start a revolutionary organization. Don't talk to me about let's elect AOC or Rashidi or Bernie Sanders to Congress. Talk to me about how we're going to organize that mother who just lost her son, or that brother. However, as we start the projects that will eventually move the workers and the whole community into open conflict with the ruling clique, my own personal observations lead me to the independent conclusion that the political vanguard and even its early project need to be defended. Clearly, the political cadre needs protection from the enemy's culture military, its secret police and vigilante death squads. Armed struggle is at the very heart of revolution. Armed struggle is at the heart of revolution, not nonprofits, not electoral politics. Armed struggle is at the very heart of revolution. George Jackson is very clear. If the problems of the people cannot be redressed because the necessary resources are in the hands of a relatively few families and individuals, it means that we are going to have to seize their property. Seizing property has always meant some form of war, some form of armed struggle. If history is our guide, it clearly records that nothing, brothers and sisters, of any great value has ever changed hands without a struggle, or at least a show of or threat of violence. Men, our oppressors simply don't surrender what they think of as their privilege and property except by force. History itself is economically motivated class struggle. And on that note, comrades, brothers and sisters, I'm going to turn it over to the chairman so that way we can have some questions and answers or statements, whatever you need to say. All power to the people.
All power, Chairman Shaka. Okay, so let's see. Stop screen sharing for a second. All right. So, all right. Any questions or any comments, analysis about your material conditions in your community, as it would be in relation to this text that we are reading here? Well, the floor is open. So if you got something you want to say, you can just speak up on it. I know somebody's got something to say. Come on. We got 11 guys here.
You know, I always got something to say, but I'm going to wait.
All right,
I'll go first.
We're going to go with Jonathan here.
Yes, hello, power to the people, and I'm so grateful to the chairman for sharing the educational reading of George Jackson. And I just had a question, which is, what can I've been, sharing a lot on Facebook of things from the Black Panther, New African Black Panther Party, and various articles, things like that. But I don't know what material, what things I could do. I live in Boston, and I'm just wondering how I can, be which I do to be more participatory in the
I think you froze up, comrade.
Yeah, you're breaking up. I think it's because it looks like you might be on the train. That might be why you're frozen. You want to repeat that again? We didn't catch the last part.
Yeah, I'm just saying that I appreciate the chairman for sharing this with us, the education effort and sharing with the George Jackson what he had to say, his writings, the Bundy Eye. And I have been sharing, on Facebook things from the New African Black Panther Party and the White Panther Party. And I'm just wondering what, if anything, I can do. I live in Boston to try to help support or be more participatory with the Black Panthers. I just wanted to thank you.
So I argue that that's a question for Shaka, just because you're a lot closer to him than me. I'm out in the Midwest. So Shaka, if you want to answer that question.
All power to the people. Thank you for that question, comrade. Yeah. No, I think the most important thing that anyone can do in the Panther Revolution is to build where they at, to take the conditions in your community, whether it's around police brutality, housing, medical, whatever, charter schools, and get active around that so you can build the base area of social, cultural, and political power. For our elder comrades, we do advise them to join our elder committee, such as you, Yaya. Over time, we're going to open up the Rainbow Coalition, which involves 8 other organizations, and we all will be in Chicago September the 24th. You can also serve as an elder within that capacity as well. So it's just a matter of finding out where you can maximize your talent and your energy on behalf of the Panther Revolution. But what we'll do after this call study is include you in the UPM political education chat room, but we'll go from there.
All power. All right, Rob, you had something?
Yeah, real quick. I'm a little distracted because I'm at work, but if you guys could hear me, I just wanted to, elaborate on the aspect of armed struggle or war, but also, look at it from another perspective. Because as what George was saying about, the gorilla in going up against 10 people, I think that we should also learn how to study our enemy on multiple fronts. And I'm saying that because that the U.S. studies revolutionaries to the T. The military of the U.S. study all the revolutionaries of Mao, Ho Chi Minh, and many others, and they try to incorporate some of their tactics in that regard. Is understanding that how we also need to study them because they study us. If that makes any sense, what I'm trying to say. But I wanted to also elaborate on the aspect of what Mao talked about as war. War is politics with bloodshed, and politics is war without bloodshed. So, understanding that in its context, what we do politically is a struggle against our oppressors. And we need to make sure that we, what we do politically is in our favor, and it's strategized, it's strategic, because I just look at this all as like chess. We have a defensive strategy, and we have a stalemate strategy, and we have an offensive strategy, and we need to make sure that we incorporate that on all fronts. May it be educational wise or whatever. It doesn't matter. There's going to be multiple angles in which how we could further the revolution, in those regards. But that's all I had to say. I apologize. I'm a little distracted at work. All power.
Yeah, you said two things that I wanted to elaborate on. The first thing was that, the statement that by Mao that politics is war with bloodshed, or war without bloodshed, and war is politics without bloodshed. That's actually kind of illuminated a little bit in text, where George is talking about how every time you organize something within the community, it opens up another facet for a militant struggle. And then the second thing is that, like you were saying, with how the enemy state studies revolutionaries, this is something that had not really come about until the Vietnam War. When they were fighting the Vietnamese, they had to read up on things like the art of war, for example, because one of the things that Mao did over in China, and the Vietnamese strategy was somewhat illuminated by the previous struggles that had happened in Russia and in China. But one of the things that Mao did was, in his development of guerrilla warfare, the protracted People's War, some of that was heavily influenced by his reading of the art of war. And so after the Vietnam War, what ended up happening was the U.S. Government mandated that the specific military divisions have libraries, and in each one of those libraries, they have documents, copies of these military treatises by Mao, and all the way back to 1000 BC with Sun Tzu. So they've been studying these things for decades now, and each time a militant movement comes into existence, revolutionary or not, if there's a military treatise that gets adopted, they study how it was implemented on the ground and what the theory behind it was. So you're absolutely right in these two, for both of those things that you said. Sister Robinson.
Yes, I just wanted to make the comment that every time we leave our homes, we are at war. We are at war when we look around at the homelessness, the addicted people, the mental health, the police brutality, corruption in the local government, lack of a good educational system or medical system, and the list goes on and on and on. The thing that I would like to drive home is that I believe if we would get to the youth at a younger age, if we could start with the youth and educate them as far as the things that we're discussing now, so that they would have a blueprint as to how to deal with all of these isms and so on and so forth, that we will stand a better chance at building in this country and growing through education is one way. And I just wanted to just say that how George Jackson was so knowledgeable from being able to, study and read books like that and study all of these different revolutionaries. And we as revolutionaries have to do the same thing because the Black Panther Party really was for self-defense. So when we look at these events here that happened at the San Quentin prison, it had to be some kind of level of resistance. So how do we handle preventing getting to the point where we have to resist? All power.
All power. Tom.
Yeah, I thought what was really significant was his suggestion that we look at the whole capitalist imperialist system as one city, that, as one entity that's all over the world, wherever the skyscrapers are in the midst of huge shanty towns, that's the enemy, that's the beast. And if we develop this worldwide view of seeing it as one entity and organize worldwide to deal with that entity, it's like whatever we do here has to not only work here, but it has to also serve as a model that can be transformed in the third world countries into a much more powerful mass movement than is capable here at this time. But that wave, like the wave goes out, the wave comes back, and the wind from Africa and Asia and Latin America can have a powerful effect on the struggle here. It goes back and forth. But we have to have that overall grasp of one concentrated enemy that we're fighting on a global scale, and get the people to see it that way. That's all.
Absolutely. And in this writing, the past few classes that we have, we really see kind of the ideological underpinnings of the New African Black Panther Party. It's really illuminated by these texts. So I think a lot of the writings, authored by you, Tom, and Shaka and Kwame, they're very distilled versions of what you get out of George Jackson here. Do we have any other comments, questions, analysis, anything like that?
If not, I could jump right back in, Chairman Jake.
That's probably the best move.
All power to the people. There's simply no way to compare this society or its historical experience with that of a tiny colonial country like Chile. Allende is not seizing property. His government is buying property. Catch that? That is huge right there, comrades, because that's what we have in Latin America. I know we love Venezuela and Maduro and the stiff resistance against imperialism that his party is putting up and have put up in the past. But they have not seized property. That's why this bum, this Gusano, Juan Guido, can go all over the world, being held by colonizers as the elected leader of Venezuela. Catch that. I'm glad they locked that bum up. They should have put him before a firing squad. Show you the humanity of Venezuela. The same thing with Nicaragua, although there's a different kind of political thing there. Nicaragua came into freedom through armed struggle. The Sandinistas, 79, kicked out the puppet of the United States. And then there was some back and forth. The imperialists was able to kick them out of power. And then the current leader in power negotiated with the West, and they established the system they have right now. But they have not seized property since they came back into office, nor have the left-wing government of Chile, who was just recently elected. Let's see what Colombia do. You have a guerrilla there who just got elected, right? From the FARC. And you have a sister. Let's see what they do in Colombia. Revolution is about seizing property. Socialist governments, which attempt to coexist with capitalist economics, completely forget the economic motive of human social history. This is what I'm talking about. Revisionism has given birth to countless socialistic hermaphrodites, always to the detriment of people's power. Strained, tortured definitions of social existence and organization have trapped the people in so many contradictions that most have given up hope of harnessing the modern industrial state or even understanding it. What did George say, comrades, in in the prison letters? The prison letters from George Jackson. He makes the same statement in a different way. George said, catch this, strained, tortured definitions of social existence and organization have trapped the people in so many contradictions that most have given up all hope of harnessing the modern industrial state or even understanding it. Even understanding it. In the prison letters, George say, if you give a shotgun to an uneducated Black or an uneducated brown person or poor white, he will use that shotgun to rob the store down the street because he don't understand the purpose of the shotgun is to enforce the demands of the people. It's to enforce the demands of the people. It's not to enforce your personal desires to be rich. And so people have given up all hope. And then we blame the people when they say, oh, I don't want to hear that idea. Throw that newspaper in the garbage. I don't feel like supporting your program. And we mumble to one another, to our 5 members in our organization. Oh man, them people are so uncouth, so uneducated. They can't even see I'm bringing them light. No, you're uncouth, uneducated. You can't see the light the people are trying to explain to you. They're saying we're tired of being hoodwinked by 1,000 different ideas. Give us something concrete that address our immediate needs right now. Right now. England, before the Tories or between the Tories, is liberal socialists. Comrades, brothers and sisters, military dictatorships, clearly totalitarian, are ruled by cliques traveling under the designation Revolutionary Council. Catch that. Everybody in America want to call themselves a revolutionary organization. But George is saying, examine their practice. You got liberal socialists in England. You got them in Germany. You got them here in the United States Congress, called the Squad, and their leader is Bernie Sanders. But examine their practice, not what they say out their mouth. You're a revolutionary when you implement revolutionary theory. Without revolutionary theory, there can be no revolutionary movement. Simple as that. Simple as that. Without revolutionary theory, there could be no revolutionary movement. I don't care if you're a Nation of Islam. I don't care if you're a Baptist. I don't care if you're an elk or a gun club, or you like to get together and play chess. If there's no revolutionary theory being exchanged, you're wasting the people's time. You're engaging in entertainment. Entertainment. George saying it's about the practice. No argument has any substance if it conflicts with the objective conditions, the clear, incontrovertible facts. In our case, brothers and sisters, these facts can be read from the nation's dailies in the obituary section. Blacks who seriously advocate revolution are killed. Blacks who attack property relations are slated for the graveyard or the prison camp. Catch that. Catch that. Blacks who seriously, think of Jamil El-Amin, political prisoner. Man, been on the front lines 60 years. 60 years. They couldn't get him the way they wanted in the 60s and 70s. They got about 5 years out of him in Attica. But they wanted him dead. They wanted him in prison for the rest of his life. He got out. And Islam took him where it took him. But the enemy never forgot. The enemy have a long memory. And they threw him in prison on trumped up charges. Think about the San Francisco 8. I'm talking about last 10 years. San Francisco 15 years, with Jalil Muta King, Herman Bell, who was locked up at the time, were brought up on fake murder charges against the police, where they brought cats out of San Francisco and the Torres brothers and the cat out of New Orleans up on so-called murder charges of a pig. 30 years ago, the enemy court said, whatever confession you got out of them is illegitimate, void, and null because they were extracted with electric on the brothers' private parts. They were extracted when they pulled out the brothers' fingernails. They were extracted when they put those brothers and sisters' faces in toilet bowls and kept flushing the water. And so the enemy threw that charge out in 1970s. But the FBI bring it up 30 years later. So this is what George is saying. Blacks who advocate revolution don't play with this stuff, because you're gonna either be killed, thrown in prison, or be made a mockery by the people. George said it's a national cultural tradition to kill blacks. revolutionary blacks. That's what he's talking about. Since these are the facts, it follows that, quote, and this is by V.I. Lenin, an oppressed class which does not strive to learn to use arms, to acquire arms, only deserves to be treated like slaves. We cannot forget, unless we become bourgeois pacifists or opportunists, that we are living in a class society, that there's no way out of this society, and there can be none except by means of the class struggle. In every class society, whether it is based on slavery, serfdom, or at present on wage labor, the oppressing class is armed. Catch that. What did Lenin say? This is a race struggle or a theology struggle? He said it's a class struggle. The haves and the have-nots, the oppressor and the oppressed, the colonized and the colonizer. They have a class. They sit at the top. They call themselves popular names within the mainstream culture of the United States. Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, Carlos Slim. Now you can add the pseudo-black bourgeois class. Kanye West, $2 billion. Jay-Z, Jordan. People don't represent us. They're pseudo-bourgeoisie. So this is a struggle between the poor, oppressed proletarian workers and those at the top, the exploiters. George go on to say, comrades, brothers and sisters, the Vanguard Party cannot stay alive long enough to effect a broad consciousness unless it possesses the latent threat of force. They're going to claim that our clothing projects, that our people bazaars, the people stores, and decentralized cottage industries are fronts for stolen property. The establishment would claim that the Vanguard Party is feeding and clothing people with goods stolen from the old enemy culture. They'll claim that we're buying it from the city-states lumpen who steal everything they can sell, or that we're ripping it off ourselves. Of course, comrades, brothers and sisters, this will be used by the enemy to justify an attack upon our political projects, our infrastructure. That's why we say to comrades in the Panther Revolution, we are an above ground legal organization, not because we fear the attack of the enemy, but because we need to stay alive long enough to effectuate change in the people by building base areas of social, cultural, and political power. We have to effectuate change. And we can't just go out there with the gun and shoot you. Bow, we got you, enemy, and they shoot us down. Okay, that's heroic, but that does not benefit the Panther Revolution, the worldwide socialist revolution. That may benefit the immediate emotions of the people who see heroic struggle in that act. But over the long term, it would only slow the revolution down because we need consciousness as the driving force in the revolution, not brutality or militaristic activity. Consciousness, that Panther love, that world-changing love, that liberating love. I think Huey P. Newton said that the people are not motivated by great hate. In fact, they're motivated by great love. And that was a spinoff of Che Guevara saying that the people, let me say at the risk of seeming ridiculous, that the true revolutionary is motivated by love. Motivated by love, not by profit, not by egoism, not by greed, not by the gun. But the true revolutionary is motivated by love. The assaults will be justified by them in a dozen different ways. Whether we establish ourselves in storefronts or in our homes, they will attack us behind the fire ordinance, the sanitation department, the anonymous tip. The establishment's mercenaries will break in shooting. Think of Fred Hampton. And all of us who are not killed will go to jail. Think of what happened on 41st and Central, 1969, December the 9th, when the Panthers had the shootout in San Francisco, Southern California, excuse me. All of them went to jail. And it was by the grace of the people's support that no Panther died that day. No Panther died that day. The establishment pigs will break in shooting, and all of us who are not killed will go to jail for violating the fire ordinance, resisting arrest, attempting murder, and receiving stolen property, etc. It's as predictable as nightfall. I'm convinced, comrades, brothers and sisters, that any serious organizing of people must carry with it from the start a potential threat of revolutionary violence. Without it, the establishment forces will succeed in isolating the political organizer and closing down his project before the people can feel its benefits. Self-determination requires a small, hidden, highly trained army equipped with the very best and most destructive of military weapons and a bodyguard of counter-terrorists. The Vanguard Party distinguishes itself in the service of the people and superimposes itself over the old culture through the city-state. Catch that, comrades. The revolutionary superimposes him or herself over the old culture in your community, your block, the old culture that lead to individualism, that lead to killing one another, that lead to stealing from one another. That's the old culture, establishment as a byproduct of the capitalist system. The enemy set our communities up that way. They designed those projects. They put those trailer homes in Appalachia. Those the folks in power. So we have to come up with a new culture that imposes ourselves on that. And we have been doing it. Though small we are within the worldwide socialist revolution here in the United States. I'm talking about the Panther Revolution. Our voice is mighty. Our voice is mighty. And so we're working hard, and we have to work hard to impose new ideas, new ethics, new morality over the old ideas of divide and conquer, gangster hoe, drugs, abuse, the disrespect of women, the relegation of women to the back burner of the movement. All of that is the old stuff, a derivative of this enemy system, and we have to impose Panther love on that stuff. Tactics designed to further the development of revolutionary consciousness must be based upon the prevailing state of class and race antagonisms created out of the new relationship. We can be certain that the nucleus of a clandestine army will already exist by then. The government's repressive agencies will also be well infiltrated by Blacks and other revolutionary people. Infiltration is the work of the professional revolutionary. Infiltrating the establishment's protective agencies will also tend to neutralize the ruling class's attempt to isolate the Black vanguard commune from the larger body of the class structure. All efforts to isolate the Black revolution must be resisted. All efforts. This is what George is saying here. We must not isolate ourselves into little territories. Oh, I'm a Black nationalist. I don't deal with the whites. The whites will, only trickers. Oh, I can't trust the Latinos. The Arabs just want to come in our community and buy up all the houses. You know, so that prevents us from looking amongst all those ethnic groups for the unitarian conduct necessary for multinational proletarian revolution here in the United States. And guess who benefits when we are divided like that? The enemy at the top, because he is saying, well, they can't beat me by themselves. The blacks certainly can't beat me by themselves, because all I got to do is make it a race war and say the blacks want to kill the whites. And now you got blacks and whites killing each other, while the people at the top is sitting there laughing. Their wealth is protected. Their status is protected. Their system is protected, because all they're going to do is send in their Marine, send in their FBI, and they're going to break up the schism amongst the black and the white, throw us in prison, and then they go on exploiting as they have done for 200 years. So we have to be clear. This is not a race struggle. This is a class struggle that is attenuated by racism. Racism, like Frank Hampton Sr. said, is a byproduct of capitalism. It's constructed and made by men in power, to divide the people, to divide Africans. They came up over the pseudoscience, and we still allow that stuff to divide us. I don't like that person, because, you know, all of the ancestors did this to me. What kind of scientific thinking is that? Who got the right to tell a John Brown in 1861 lost all 5 of his kids to the ending of the transatlantic slave trade and the slave state in the United States? All 5 of his kids died on the gallows, fighting alongside our brothers and sisters and our native brothers and sisters against the slave state. Who's going to deny Marilyn Buck her rightful place alongside us in this struggle? A white woman went to prison in the 1970s for working with the BLA. She escaped in 1973, joined back up with the Black Liberation Army under the Revolutionary Armed Task Force and the Weathermen, or some parts of the Weathermen, and went in Clinton State Prison, 1979, with a shotgun, and told that pig, lay down. We come to free our sister. And they whisked Assata Shakur out of the prison here in this New Jersey, where I'm currently at. Which one of us gonna stand up and say, because you white, you don't have the right to stand beside us? Our arrogance only works to benefit the enemy. All efforts to isolate the vanguard must be resisted. The Black colony must actively invite other revolutionary people to follow our example. We must give full refuge to the refugees and eventually work out some means to coordinate our operations with theirs at every level. He's talking about these ethnic groups around the country. He said some effort must be worked out to coordinate our operations with theirs at every level. However, we cannot delay our own preparations toward a united Black revolutionary culture. No one, brothers and sisters, comrades, will undertake to aid us unless they sense the power of our movement. It is Blacks who must play not only the role of liberating the Black colony, but also the leading role in the liberation of the whole city-state. The whole America must be liberated. George ain't talking about establishing 5 or 6 different ethno-states after we destroy the enemy at the top. What kind of nonsense would that be? We'll be fighting each other over the resources, because we'll be operating along the same capitalistic lines. George say, no one will undertake to aid us unless they sense the power of our movement, the power of the Black revolutionary movement. It is Blacks who must play not only the role of liberating the Black colony, but also the leading role in the liberation of the whole city-state, the whole damn country. The whole damn country. To expect that someone else would take the full responsibility for our own liberation is suicide. It's nonsense. We'll be asked to be patient for another 100 to 150 years. We'll get stuck with long theoretical explanations on consciousness or objective conditions when it's clear that consciousness will not grow unless there's someone among us willing to feed it. Consciousness grows in spirals. Growth implies feeding and being fed. We feed consciousness by feeding people. Catch that. You give them a pamphlet along with the bag of food. We feed consciousness by feeding people, addressing ourselves to their needs, the basic and social needs, working, organizing toward a united national left. After the people have created something that they are willing to defend, a wealth of new ideas and an autonomous subsistence infrastructure, then they are ready to be brought into open conflict with the ruling class and its supporters. This conflict, brothers and sisters, must extend to every level of capitalist production and distribution. Consciousness of our power will grow as a result of this mass contact with the ruling forces. You see what I'm saying? When a pig kick a door in at our house, that neighbor down the street that was unwilling to participate was standoffish. When she see that pig kicking our door down, that does a lot more than 1,000 speeches, because you see the very nature of the brutal state, the very nature of the enemy, a traducer. That's why we call a pig, a traducer. You violate the people's rights. A shot in the head, a knee on the neck of George Floyd have done more to raise consciousness than all the speeches, books, and doctrines that have come out from Cornel West, that have come out from Michael Eric Dyson, that have come out from Barack Obama, that have come out from the Black intelligentsia class. A knee on the neck would do more to stimulate people's awareness of the nature of the pig than all these books that they write to pad their own pockets and explain the socio-dynamics of Black life in urban America. So our consciousness, the people's consciousness, will grow as a result of our contact with the oppressor, the ruling forces, the pigs, the education system, the military. There's no question that people must be organized and educated to the benefits of people's government before they can successfully move against their class enemy. However, there seems to be some question as to how seriously we should take ourselves in our work of organizing. Comrades, brothers and sisters, it is 6:30, the time we normally end, and I'm going to open it up again to 10 minutes of discussion, and at the 10 minutes, Chairman Jake will go ahead and end our class for this day. We called him the general. The sky is blue. Today is clear and sunny. The house that George once lived in headed for the grave. While the Panther spoke of the spirit, I saw a man move cat-like across the rooftop, glide along the horizons, casting no shadow, only chains into the sea. Using his calloused hands and broken feet to smash and kick down barriers. The angels say his name is George Lester Jackson, L. General. On that note, comrades, all power to the people. I turn it over to Chairman Jake.
All power. All right, so do we have any questions about what we read so far? Anything we want to talk about? Floor is open as always.
Well, if not, this has been a long study, and I want to appreciate the comrades for coming to this study. A heads up, we'll be dealing with Walter Rodney, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa in 2 weeks. So I want to give comrades a heads up. We'll be finished this book. So be ready for that. I think Walter Rodney will be a dope analytical tool for us. We can analyze Africa from a class perspective. We can see how he was able to break down the myths around Africa being one homogeneous society. He shows that the kings and queens were oppressors in the sense that they were not elected to their position. They did not get their position as a result of people's struggle. They got their position as a result of so-called divine right, or the God have chosen us to be the monarchy, the leaders. And Walter Rodney breaks all that down, and he shows how the West have used Africa as a basket case to pad their and cough their own economies. So we'll be getting into that, brothers and sisters. And on that note, all power to the people. I'll see you next Tuesday.
All power to the people.
All power.
All power.